So rewriting equations to isolate the or a variable depending on what it's telling you to do. So if you look at this first problem, this is just a reminder before we actually start doing these ones where we're isolating the variable. So if I'm trying to find the L, so solve for L. So if I'm trying to solve for L, I'm going to, of course, circle the variable that I'm trying to get by itself. 2 times 6 is 12. So let me rewrite that. And then circle the variable again. The opposite of add 12 is subtract 12. And subtract 12. That cancels. 2 minus 2 is 0. 5 minus 1 is 4. Equals 2L. And then we know that we need to still try to get L by itself. So it's 2 times L. So the opposite of multiply would be divide. And divide. So L would equal 40 divided by 2 is 20. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same equation, but you're just going to see more variables. So now this is where you actually are going to rewrite an equation. So if I have P equals 2L plus 2W, and that is equation for perimeter of a rectangle. So if I have this equation, remember, think about a rectangle. Perimeter is the distance all the way around. So I have a length and a width. Well, if I want the distance all the way around, I have 2 lengths. So 2 lengths plus I have 2 widths is going to give me the perimeter. Now, if you look at this equation that we just solved, notice it's the same thing. 52 would have been the perimeter. It's 2L and then 2W, so 2 times 6. So you can see from this equation that we just solved, the 6 would have been the W. Notice we knew the perimeter, we knew the width, so we were solving to find the length. So this triangle, or this rectangle, I'm sorry, would have had a length of 20 and a width of 6. 20 plus 20 is 40. 6 plus 6 is 12. 40 plus 12 is 52. So this ended up finding our length, and that's why you do this. In some cases, they're not going to have very many numbers. It's just going to be the original equation, and it's going to ask you what's the equation to find the length. So you would still solve it the same way. So we're going to solve for L. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to solve for L. I can't actually do anything with 2W, so I'm just going to subtract 2W and subtract 2W. Notice this one has a W, that one has a P, so I'm just going to write it as P minus 2W equals 2L. So P minus 2W equals 2L. So notice, remember, that's 2 times L. I'm going to actually do it in orange just so you can see the same steps. So that's 2 times L, so I'm going to divide by 2. And you are going to divide this side by 2. Now, depending on the type of test, sometimes you'll just see it as P minus 2W divided by 2. You'll either see it like that, or you can break it into 2 parts. So it could be P divided by 2 minus 2 W divided by 2 equals L. If you notice it's broken apart like this though, they're not going to leave it as 2 divided by 2. Let me use a different color. That color doesn't show up. You would have P over 2 minus 2 divided by 2, remember cancels, minus W equals L. So pay attention to, especially if it's multiple choice, pay attention to how the question is, or the answers are written. If you notice that it's written as a single fraction, you could leave it like this. You cannot cancel that and that when it's written in a single. But if it's written as individual, go to this step and then make sure you simplify the numbers that way. This is the final answer if it was a single fraction. This is the final answer if it was separated out. Okay, let's do another example. So let's say I had 3x minus 4 equals 12. And I said solve for x. So multiply out 3x, 3 times negative 4, 3 times negative 4 would be negative 12, equals 12, add 12, add 12, 3x would equal 12 plus 12 is 24, divide by 3, divide by 3, x would equal 8. Okay, now let's do this one. So if we have 4x plus p equals w, and I said to solve for p. Just like we did here, notice the parentheses. You have to distribute. So you still have to do the same concepts as if everything were numbers and you were just solving for p. If it helps you, you can always just pick random numbers or and plug them in for the other variables. But just remember, you still have to go back. So you kind of just have to get in the habit of knowing what to do. So I'm going to multiply 5 times 4x. Well, 5 times 4 is 20. So 20, and then don't forget the x. And then 5 times p would be 5p. And then equals w. Remember, this parentheses is only around this stuff, so I don't multiply the 5 times the w. Okay. We're still trying to get p by itself, so I'm going to subtract 20x and subtract 20x. So my answer would be 5p equals w minus 20x. Okay, still trying to get p by itself because it said solve for p. So it's 5 times p, so the opposite of multiply by 5 is divide by 5, and divide by 5. So p would equal w minus 20x over 5, or if it's multiple choice and they're written as single, you would have to break it apart. So it would be p equals, break it apart, splitting it where the addition or subtraction sign is. So I would do w over 5 minus 20x over 5. Notice in this case I need to simplify. So p would equal, the w and the 5 don't simplify, but 20 divided by 5 is 4x. 20 divided by 5 equals 4. 5 divided by 5 equals 1. So technically it's 4 over 1, which we just write as 4. Don't forget that negative. If it's a multiple choice question, you better believe that they're going to have one option that has a positive just to see if somebody forgot. So that is how you isolate a variable. We've been doing it with a whole bunch of numbers. The part that's more confusing about this is when you have more variables. So you have multiple variables and you have to solve for a single variable, because you end up not being able to actually divide, like something divided by 5, just like we did 24 divided by 3. We couldn't, or the difference is rather than having just a simplified number, you just have to leave it as the letter because you can't do anything with it.